As I sit here on my porch, gazing up at the night sky, I can't help but feel the weight of the secrets I've carried for so long. My grandson, bless his heart, has been pestering me for years to share my stories from NASA. He's always known there was more to my career than I let on. And now, in the twilight of my life, I've decided it's time to unburden myself. I'm Margaret Rose Thompson, though most folks at NASA knew me as Maggie. For 40 years, from 1959 to 1999, I was the voice of mission control. I was the lifeline between Earth and the brave souls we sent hurtling into the void. But what I'm about to share with you, what I'm finally telling my grandson as he records my words, are the stories that never made it into the history books. It's April of 2020, and the world outside is grappling with its own crisis. But the tale I'm about to unfold spans decades and reaches far beyond our little blue marble. It's a story of humanity's greatest triumphs and most terrifying discoveries, of secrets so profound they could shake the very foundations of our understanding of the universe. I remember my first day at NASA like it was yesterday. I was young, barely out of college, with stars in my eyes and dreams of being part of something greater than myself. Little did I know just how great, and how terrible, that something would turn out to be. They started me off easy, monitoring communications for some of the early unmanned missions, but it wasn't long before I was pulled into something far more classified. It was 1960, and the space race was in full swing. While the world's eyes were on the Mercury program, a select few of us were tasked with something far more ambitious and far more dangerous. We were going to put men in orbit before anyone thought it was possible. John Hawkins, David Cooper, and Michael Edwards were the brave souls chosen for this secret mission. They were the best of the best, test pilots with nerves of steel and hearts full of courage. The night of the launch, I sat at my console, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The room was thick with tension, every eye glued to screens and readouts. As the countdown reached 0 and the rockets ignited, I closed my eyes for just a moment, offering a silent prayer for our astronauts. "Maggie, you read me." John's voice crackled through my headset, steady as ever despite the G-forces crushing him into his seat. I swallowed hard, pushing down my nerves. "Loud and clear, John. You're looking good from down here." I kept my voice professional, but inside, I was a mess of excitement and fear. We were making history, and no one outside this room would ever know. For the first few hours, everything went according to plan. Our boys made it into orbit, and for a brief, shining moment, we allowed ourselves to celebrate. We'd done it. We'd beaten the Soviets to the punch, even if the world would never know. But our elation was short-lived. It started with a strange reading from one of our instruments. At first, we thought it was just a glitch, but then David's voice came through, tight with confusion and the first hints of fear. "Control, are you seeing this? There's something out here with us." I leaned forward, my fingers white-knuckled on the edge of my console. "Can you describe what you're seeing, David?" There was a long pause, filled only with the soft static of the comlink. When David spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "My God, they're bodies, human bodies, just floating out there." A chill ran down my spine, and I saw the color drain from the faces of everyone around me. It was impossible. There was no way there could be human remains in orbit. We hadn't lost anyone up there yet. What followed was a nightmare I've relived countless times over the years. Our astronauts' voices became increasingly panicked as they described a vast field of corpses, perfectly preserved in the vacuum of space. Some looked ancient, others disturbingly fresh. And then, one by one, we lost them. John's voice was the last we heard, breaking up as he screamed about something pulling him from the capsule. And then, silence, just the soft hiss of an open comm channel broadcasting emptiness. I sat there, frozen, my hand still hovering over the transmit button. Around me, the control room erupted into chaos, but it all seemed distant, muffled. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. We'd sent 3 brave men to their deaths, and we couldn't even mourn them publicly. As the reality of what had happened sank in, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up to see Robert Clark, one of our up-and-coming astronauts, his face grave. "Maggie," he said softly, "we need to scrub this. All of it. It never happened." And just like that, the cover-up began. We worked through the night, erasing every trace of the mission. By morning, it was as if John, David, and Michael had never existed. But the weight of their loss, the horror of what we'd witnessed, would stay with us forever. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The universe, it seemed, had far more terrifying secrets in store for us. And I, Margaret Rose Thompson, would be there to hear every chilling transmission, every desperate plea, as humanity ventured further into the unknown. The years following that first secret mission were a blur of public triumphs and private terrors. As the world celebrated each successful Apollo mission, a select few of us carried the burden of what we'd seen and what we continued to discover. It wasn't until Apollo 18 that our worst fears were realized once again. I remember the day clearly. It was July of 1973, and the world thought NASA had wrapped up its lunar missions with Apollo 17. But in the classified depths of mission control, we were preparing for something unprecedented. Apollo 18 wasn't just about planting flags or collecting rocks. We were going back to investigate something our previous missions had glimpsed, but never fully explored, and structure on the far side of the moon that defied explanation. The crew for this mission was handpicked. Thomas Reeves and Samuel Frost, 2 of our most level-headed astronauts. As I watched them suit up on the monitor, I couldn't help but think of John, David, and Michael. Would these men meet the same fate? The launch went off without a hitch, and for 3 days, we held our breath as Apollo 18 made its way to the moon. When they finally entered lunar orbit, the tension in mission control was palpable. We'd all seen the grainy photos, the strange geometries that shouldn't exist on our barren satellite. Now, we were about to get a first-hand look. "Maggie, we've got visual on the structure." Thomas's voice crackled through my headset. I leaned forward, my heart racing. It's like nothing we've ever seen. The angles are all wrong. It's like it's bending the light around it. For hours, Thomas and Samuel orbited the structure, taking readings and photos. Every piece of data they sent back only deepened the mystery. The structure seemed to be made of a material unknown to science, with properties that defied our understanding of physics. Finally, it was time for them to land and explore on foot. As they approached the structure in their lunar module, Samuel's voice came through, tight with awe and fear. "Control, this thing. It's reacting to our presence. There are lights moving under the surface. It's like it's alive." What happened next still haunts my dreams. Samuel was the first to step inside the structure, with Thomas monitoring from just outside. For a few minutes, all we heard was Samuel's labored breathing and occasional gasps of amazement. Then, suddenly, he screamed, "Oh God! Oh God, it's in my head." Samuel's voice was raw with terror. "There's something here, Maggie. It's trying to show me something. The altar is a key." I tried to keep my voice steady as I responded. "Samuel, what are you seeing? Can you describe it?" But Samuel's only response was more screaming, followed by a thud and then silence. Thomas, displaying remarkable courage, entered the structure to retrieve his teammate. When he emerged minutes later, he was dragging Samuel's limp form. "He's alive," Thomas reported, his voice shaking. "But he's not the same, Maggie. His eyes, they're different. We need to abort." Now, we brought them home, but Samuel Frost was never the same. The doctor said he'd experienced some kind of psychological break, but those of us who heard his transmissions knew the truth. Whatever was in that lunar structure had touched his mind, shown him things no human was meant to see. The horror of Apollo 18 should have been enough to halt our lunar expeditions, but curiosity, or perhaps something darker, drove us forward. Just months later, we were preparing for Apollo 19. This time, I had more than a professional stake in the mission. My fiancé, Robert Clark, was on the crew. Robert had been my rock through all the secret missions, the one person I could confide in about the true nature of our work. When he volunteered for Apollo 19, I was terrified. But I knew I couldn't stop him. Along with Richard Hayes, a former Green Beret turned astronaut, Robert was determined to uncover the secrets of the lunar structure. The mission started much like 18. Robert and Richard landed near the structure and began their exploration. But this time, they were prepared. They carried specialized equipment designed to penetrate the structure's mysterious outer layer. As they ventured deeper into the alien construct, Robert's voice came through my headset, filled with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. "Maggie, we found some kind of central chamber. There's an altar here, just like Samuel described. It's pulsing with energy." I gripped my console, my knuckles white. "Be careful, Robert. Don't touch anything you don't understand." But it was too late. Richard, perhaps driven by military instinct or simple human curiosity, had already approached the altar. "There's some kind of inscription," he reported. "I'm going to try to." His words cut off abruptly, replaced by a sound that still echoes in my nightmares, a high-pitched, inhuman shriek that seemed to come from Richard and the structure itself simultaneously. Robert's panicked voice came next. "Maggie, something's happened to Richard. His eyes, they're glowing. He's not human anymore." What followed was a garbled mess of screams, static, and sounds that had no place in our reality. I called out for Robert again and again, but there was no response. The last thing I heard before the transmission cut out entirely was Robert's voice, barely a whisper. "Maggie, I love you. I'm sore." And then, silence. We lost all contact with Apollo 19. No amount of hailing or scanning could pick up any sign of the lunar module or our astronauts. It was as if the moon itself had swallowed them whole. In the days that followed, I moved through life like a ghost. We fabricated a story about a malfunction, a tragic accident that claimed the lives of 2 brave astronauts. The world mourned, never knowing the true horror of what had happened. As I sit here now, decades later, I can still feel the weight of that loss. Robert's ring still hangs around my neck, a constant reminder of the sacrifices made in the name of exploration, and the terrible price of uncovering secrets we were never meant to know. But our journey into the unknown was far from over. The lunar structure was just the beginning. As humanity pushed further into space, we would encounter horrors that made even the moon's secrets seem tame by comparison. And through it all, I would be there, the voice of mission control, guiding our astronauts into an increasingly terrifying cosmos. The loss of Robert and the horrors we'd encountered on the moon cast a long shadow over NASA. But the relentless march of exploration continued, driven by a mix of scientific curiosity, and I suspect, a darker compulsion to uncover the secrets that lay beyond our world. It was in this atmosphere of trepidation and determination that we embarked on one of our most ambitious projects yet, Skylab. To the public, Skylab was presented as America's first space station, a triumph of engineering and a new frontier for long-duration spaceflight. But those of us privy to the classified files knew its true purpose. Hidden among the scientific experiments and life support systems was a secret payload, a fragment of the alien structure from the moon. I remember the day they brought it in, sealed in a containment unit that hummed with energy. The scientists assured us it was safe, that they had taken every precaution. But as I watched them loaded onto Skylab, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were making a terrible mistake. The first few months of the Skylab mission went smoothly. Our astronauts conducted their experiments, and we monitored the alien fragment closely. But then, slowly at first, things began to change. It started with minor anomalies, unexplained power fluctuations, strange readings from our instruments. Then came the nightmares. "Maggie, I can't sleep. One of the astronauts confided during a private communication, "Every time I close my eyes, I see things, shapes that shouldn't exist. And the whispers, God, the whispers." We should have aborted the mission then and there, but the higher-ups insisted we press on. They wanted answers, no matter the cost. And so, we watched helplessly as Skylab began to transform. It happened gradually at first. The astronauts reported strange growths on the walls, organic-looking structures that seemed to pulse with life. The air became thick with an otherworldly mist, and the normal sounds of the station were replaced by an eerie, constant hum. "Control, the fragment. It's changing," our lead scientist on board reported, his voice trembling. "It's growing, spreading. We can't contain it anymore." As the days wore on, the transformation accelerated. Our cameras showed us glimpses of a Skylab that no longer resembled anything human. The walls writhed with alien geometries, and strange, bioluminescent organisms floated through the air. And our astronauts, God help them, they were changing too. "I can see it all now, Maddie," the mission commander said during what would be his final transmission. His voice was eerily calm, almost reverent. "The vastness of space, the true nature of reality. We are so small, so insignificant, but we can be more. We can join them." After that, we lost all meaningful communication with Skylab. The transmissions we did receive were garbled, inhuman sounds that our linguists couldn't begin to decipher. We had created a slice of alien reality in Earth's orbit, and there was nothing we could do but watch. The official story was that Skylab had suffered a catastrophic system failure. We faked its re-entry and breakup over the Indian Ocean. In reality, it's still up there, a twisted alien thing circling our planet. Sometimes on clear nights, I swear I can see it glinting in the sky, a reminder of our hubris and the price we paid for it. But even as we grappled with the Skylab disaster, our eyes were turning to an even more distant goal: Mars. The red planet had long captured humanity's imagination, and now, with our robotic explorers, we were finally getting a close look at its secrets. The Mars Pathfinder mission was hailed as a triumph of unmanned exploration. What the public didn't know was that we had equipped it with specialized sensors designed to detect the kind of anomalies we'd encountered on the Moon. For months, it roamed the Martian surface, sending back data that seemed disappointingly mundane. Then came the dust storm. It was massive, blanketing a huge swath of the planet. Our cameras were useless, but the other instruments were going haywire. Energy readings were off the charts, and our gravitational sensors were detecting mass where there should have been none. As the storm began to clear, we received an image that made my blood run cold. There, looming over the Martian landscape, was a colossal entity. It defied description. A writhing mass of tentacles and eyes, of structures that hurt to look at. It was as if a mountain had come alive, if that mountain were designed by a mind utterly alien to our own. But the image wasn't the worst part. No, that came when we received the transmission. It wasn't in any language we recognized, but somehow we all understood it. It spoke directly into our minds, bypassing our ears entirely. "The temple awakens. The sleepers stir. Your world will be remade." In that moment, I understood the true scale of what we were dealing with. The Moon, Skylab, Mars, they were all connected. We had stumbled onto something vast and ancient, a presence that spanned our solar system and perhaps beyond. The weight of this knowledge was almost unbearable. How could we continue to send people into space, knowing what was out there? How could we keep this secret from the world? The ethical implications were staggering, and they haunted me day and night. I thought of all the lives we'd lost, all the minds we'd broken in our relentless push into the cosmos. John, David, and Michael, lost to the void. Samuel, forever changed by what he'd seen. Robert and Richard, swallowed by the lunar structure. The Skylab crew, transformed into something no longer human. And now, this entity on Mars, promising a future too terrifying to contemplate. As I sit here, recounting these horrors to my grandson, I can't help but wonder if we made the right choice in keeping all of this secret. Perhaps if we had told the world, we could have faced this threat together. Or perhaps it would have led to panic, to the breakdown of society as we know it. But our journey into the dark unknown was far from over. Even as we grappled with the implications of what we'd found in our own solar system, we were pushing further, sending our robotic emissaries to the very edge of what we knew. And out there, in the vast emptiness between the stars, we would encounter horrors that would make even the cosmic entities we'd already seen seem tame by comparison. The universe, it seemed, was far darker and more terrifying than we had ever imagined. And we, in our blind quest for knowledge, had drawn its attention to our tiny, fragile world. As I sit here, watching the sun set on another day, I can't help but marvel at how oblivious the world remains to the terrors that lurk beyond our atmosphere. The Voyager program, launched in the late 70s, was supposed to be our greatest achievement in deep space exploration. To the public, it was a triumphant journey to the outer planets and beyond. But for those of us in the know, it became a source of unrelenting dread. I remember the day we realized Voyager 1 was approaching the edge of our solar system. It was the fall of 2012, and the excitement in mission control was palpable. We were about to become the first species in known history to send an object into interstellar space. If only we had known what horrors awaited us there. The first signs that something was amiss came in the form of anomalous readings from Voyager's instruments. Energy spikes that defied explanation, gravitational fluctuations where there should have been none. At first, we attributed it to instrument malfunction. After all, the probe had been operating for over 3 decades in the harshest environment imaginable. But then came the images. Grainy, indistinct, yet undeniably terrifying. Shapes that should not exist. Geometries that hurt the mind to contemplate. And always, a sense of movement just beyond the frame, as if something vast and incomprehensible was stalking our tiny probe. It's following us. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, our lead astrophysicist, whispered one day as we pored over the latest data. Whatever it is out there, it's aware of Voyager. It's curious. The thought sent chills down my spine. We had spent decades searching for signs of extraterrestrial life, never considering that some forms of life might be better left undiscovered. As Voyager pushed further into the unknown, the encounters became more frequent, more disturbing. We began to receive audio transmissions, not the background radiation we had expected, but something else entirely. Sounds that defied description, that seemed to bypass our ears and speak directly to our souls. We'll never forget the night we received what we came to call the message. It was a series of pulses, regular yet alien, that our computers spent weeks decoding. When we finally cracked it, I wished we hadn't. "We have always been here," the message read. "In the spaces between your thoughts, in the shadows of your dreams, you have breached the veil. We are coming." The implications were staggering. These entities, whatever they were, had been aware of us all along. Our venture into deep space hadn't discovered them. It had attracted their attention. In the days that followed, a pall fell over mission control. We had always operated under the assumption that space, for all its dangers, was ultimately neutral. Now we faced the terrifying possibility that the cosmos itself was hostile, populated by intelligences so vast and alien that our very existence was an affront to them. But the true horror was yet to come. As Voyager continued its journey, we began to detect what we called the follower. It was a presence that seemed to trail just behind the probe, always just out of clear sight. In the rare images we received, it appeared as a roiling mass of darkness, studded with points of light that might have been eyes, or something far worse. "It's hurting Voyager," Dr. Rodriguez explained, her voice tight with fear, like a sheepdog guiding a lost lamb. But to where? And for what purpose? The answer came in the form of another transmission, this one even more chilling than the last. It was a series of coordinates, pointing to a location deep in interstellar space. And accompanying it, a message that made my blood run cold. The gate awaits. Your key approaches. All will be unmade and remade. In that moment, I understood the true scale of what we were dealing with. The lunar structure, the entity on Mars, the transformation of Skylab. They were all connected, all part of some vast, cosmic plan that we had unwittingly set in motion. I thought of all we had lost in our relentless push into the unknown. The brave men and women who had given their lives, their sanity, their very humanity in the name of exploration. And for what? To serve as unwitting pawns in some unfathomable cosmic game. I recount these horrors to my grandson. I can see the disbelief in his eyes. How could all of this have happened without the world knowing? How could we have kept such earth-shattering secrets for so long? The truth is, it wasn't easy. There were times when I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, to warn humanity of the terrors that awaited us in the depths of space. But then I would think of the panic, the chaos that would ensue if people knew the truth. Sometimes, I tell myself, ignorance truly is bliss. But now, as I near the end of my life, I find I can no longer bear the weight of these secrets alone. Perhaps in sharing them, I can find some measure of peace, or perhaps in some small way, I can prepare the next generation for the challenges that lie ahead. Because make no mistake, those challenges are coming. The entities we encountered are still out there, waiting, watching. Voyager continues its journey into the abyss, carrying with it the key to some cosmic lock we never meant to open. And here on Earth, we remain blissfully unaware of the doom that approaches. As I finish my tale, I can see the moon rising over the horizon. It looks so peaceful, so familiar. But I know better. I know the secrets it hides, the horrors it has witnessed. And I know that somewhere out there, beyond the reach of our most powerful telescopes, something ancient and terrible is stirring. I pray that humanity is ready for what comes next. But in my heart, I fear we never truly could be. The universe, it seems, is not only stranger than we imagine. It is stranger than we can imagine. And in its vast, uncaring expanse, we are but motes of dust, waiting to be swept away by cosmic winds we can neither understand nor control. As I close my eyes, feeling the weight of years and secrets pressing down upon me, I find myself drawn back to those early days at NASA, to the hope and excitement we felt as we took our first steps into the cosmos. If only we had known then what horrors awaited us in the dark between the stars. If only we had left well enough alone. But it's too late for regrets now. The die is cast. The cosmic game is in motion. All we can do is hope that when the final move is made, humanity will somehow find a way to survive the unmaking and remaking of all we know. And as for me, I find myself longing to see Robert again, to feel his arms around me one last time. Perhaps in whatever lies beyond this life, we'll be reunited. And perhaps together, we can finally find some peace among the stars that have haunted my dreams for so long.